Hi there, Nigel Howitt from lawfulrebel.com here with a brief message to say that it is not your health that's under threat, but it is your freedom that is being attacked. These are dark days indeed for anybody who values freedom, and as we see this madness, this lockdown madness all over the world due to an alleged health threat, we are watching what remains of our freedom being dismantled in front of our eyes. I can't help but ask myself how it has come to this when an alleged health threat can be combated by jamming on the economic handbrake, by economically locking down and causing a far more serious problem than the alleged health threat. I'm aghast at how this can be justified in the public mind. I realise that it is justified by those who are selling us the narrative, because of course they want the economy to topple over, which it's destined to anyway. It's mathematically inevitable. We have this unsustainable debt-based economy, everything in an overvalued bubble. It cannot sustain. And we know that, of course, the people pulling the strings, the people at the top of the parasitic power heap, would like to be able to blame economic collapse on some external event, and coronavirus and the COVID-19 disease lend itself so perfectly as a scapegoat or fall guy for this economic collapse. It also amazes me that there are still some people who think that this is the end of the New World Order, not the beginning, and they somehow seem to think that freedom is going to get a shot in the arm from this whole saga. I don't see any justification for that really, apart from wishful thinking, and I think that all these signs are that freedom is being dealt a very serious blow. The fundamental deception right at the heart of it all is that there exists a scary virus. There exists a threat to human health. This is the fundamental deception. And as soon as we wash our hands every few minutes, as soon as we stand in a queue 2 meters from somebody, as soon as we don our mask, our physical behaviour implies that we've bought into this. It's a very powerful propaganda tool to get people to do these rituals to reinforce the implicit premise that there is a danger out there to your health. And when you zoom out and just clock the context and a few basic facts, ask a few basic questions, the mainstream narrative falls apart. As we start to unpick what's happening, the whole story, and try to make sense of it, we have to bear in mind that we live in an age of deception. We have to catch up to that. And anybody out there who doesn't realise that propaganda is the way of things, it's what goes on. Read the book Propaganda, written by Edward Bernays back in 1928, and catch up to what is going on. Behavioural management and perception management are very much the norm these days, and we have to grasp that as part of our context. Also, we have to recognise that this official narrative of a dangerous virus so perfectly fits so perfectly suits, I should say, a known agenda of known liars, that surely only a fool would swallow this without some sort of questioning. It's not a conspiracy theory that there is a bunch of globalists out there with an agenda towards global government, and they offer all of these reasons, how convenient it is to cooperate and align and harmonise government actions. There is a significant faction of those in power out there who want global government. And this plays perfectly into their hands, into the hands of that agenda. And we also know that governments lie to us. I mean, how many times do people need a liar to lie to them before they say, hang about, I'm not listening to you. I'm not listening to anything you say without giving it serious questioning. And of course, this is what we should all be doing with any narrative that we hear from the government. So we've got this PCR test, which is identifying genetic material, no specific virus, it has to be noted. And this test identifies this genetic material, bits of damaged DNA that are very likely present in almost every human, that's alive. So the scope for false positive tests is enormous, and I thoroughly urge people to look into the testing. What's being tested for? How accurate it is? What are they looking for? We then have to bear in mind that computer models are being used to amplify this scary virus, and we know how computer models have been inaccurate with the climate issue, and it's the same bunch from Imperial College London with their computer modelling that are responsible for this. Neil Ferguson and co. grossly exaggerating the threat, and on the basis of a grossly exaggerated threat through figures that are death rate figures that cannot possibly be accurate, because they can only be meaningful when you know the whole sum of people infected, and we don't when you're only just testing people who are already quite severely ill. Of course, we're not getting any meaningful kind of death rate. So these bogus death rates are then plugged into the computer models to give us outlandishly exaggerated and fear-mongering scenarios. And these are trumpeted as the excuse for economic lockdown. And remember that this is just slowing the spread of a virus. It doesn't do anything to prevent it. It just slows the spread, and we're seeing a controlled economic demolition for the sake of saving and not overloading national healthcare systems. This is absolutely mad. The message, the propaganda coming from the state, coming from the mainstream narrative and all of the mainstream media, is that we must take this seriously. This is a serious danger, this virus, and we're encouraged to be afraid. Not even the young are safe. We're getting this relentlessly, and when you know that somebody's lied to you before, you should be very suspicious of the message they want you to get. Under the perfect pretext, we're seeing freedom of movement has disappeared. Freedom of association. You can't even visit your friends. Freedom of association's gone. Freedom of a movement is gone. We're seeing freedom of speech eroded as the so-called alternative media, of which I'd like to think I'm a part, is allegedly putting out harmful information, i.e. harmful to the mainstream narrative, and thus people are being shut down from YouTube and other platforms, and Facebook. The algorithms are censoring more and more truth. So freedom of speech is gone. And shortly, when the argument is made for the cashless society and a new government issued crypto digital pound or dollar, then the last fragments of economic freedom will also be gone. All transactions automatically taxed and visible to the state, facilitating total control. So freedom has really suffered a mortal blow here, and it's very, very serious and saddening situation. So as we try and identify the truth, we must start with asking who's talking, what's their track record of truth, what agendas are there associated with who, what are the outcomes, what are the implications of what's happening. We have to foresee implications. And when we pull all these strings together and ask the question, the classic detective question, who benefits, qui bono, we can see that the state benefits in every single sense. The state wins and you and I lose. And when we remember that the state is simply the tool of the shareholders of central banks, those at the top of the power heap, those globalists who want this global government. The state is simply their tool, and we're playing directly into their hands. More control, more travel restrictions we shall see, more surveillance, vaccination, we're going to see the cashless society, instant crowd dispersal now. I mean, how's any protest ever going to accumulate any momentum, acquire any momentum, when there's just a pandemic card that can be dropped at will? Instant crowd dispersal. This is really serious, these implications, ladies and gentlemen. And also, when we look at who's talking, when we look at the tag team of government and big pharma in the wings there with their vaccine, Bill Gates and co, we see that the whole medical paradigm, the whole sort of model of healthcare, the whole understanding of how to achieve health and immunity that the state, big pharma, are standing on, as they present this false narrative, alarmist scenario to us, they're presenting in a classic problem, reaction, solution scenario, as coined by David Icke, of course. They're presenting the vaccination on a medical paradigm that is false. It doesn't work. And for those of us who've been studying health for many years, looking into integrative and functional, interchangeable terms, functional medicine, integrative medicine, we know that health comes from a functional immune system. It doesn't come from shots. It doesn't come from injecting ourselves with all the toxic load in vaccines. The efficacy of vaccines is deeply questionable. And what we really need is a broad, diverse human microbiome. We need a healthy gut that's intact. We need good nutrition. We need a functioning immune system. This is the road to health, not isolation, washing hands, and vaccines. The whole model that these purveyors of the mainstream narrative are offering us as their solution is a non-solution. It's actually not a road to health. So this is very, very important to grasp here. And further appreciate that the government and big pharma and their track record, if you like, on health, or government on its track record of health, disregard for the dangers of electromagnetic fields and the relentless push towards 5G. That's another whole interrelated topic, of course, the health effects thereof. But the disregard for the health impacts of EMFs is the point. The disregard for the health impacts of fluoridated water, which is overseen and encouraged by government. The disregard for the health impacts of mercury amalgam fillings. The disregard for the health impacts of poor diet and sugar. The disregard for the health impacts of vaccines. That unquestionable subject. You just, you'll instantly have your video taken down if you're seriously questioning the efficacy of vaccines. So the track record of government is not your friend. It's not an entity, an organisation. A government is not pro-health. It's never been. Look at its track record. Even on recognising the dangers of smoking, it was sort of dragged kicking and screaming to update its view on the harmful and cancerous effects of smoking. So we have to remember this when we look at who's talking. What's the message? Who's it coming from? Is it credible? And the answer, of course, is that none of it's credible, and there's a massive contradiction. So it's this tag team who have an appalling record on your health that are now telling you to give up your freedoms in order for some sort of perceived health security. And it's a lie. A key aspect of dismantling this narrative is to look at the testing, is to look at what is being tested for and how much useful information is gleaned from the tests. And I totally recommend that you must look into the testing and watch as many videos as you can, research that, try to find out about this PCR test and understand what they can and can't tell from this test. It's a fundamental part of this false narrative. And we hear people say, oh, who could have predicted this? Well, of course, Event 201 you may know about, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in association with the World Economic Forum and the Johns Hopkins University ran this scenario. What would happen with a global pandemic? What should we do? How would we coordinate a response? This happened last October, and it's really important to know that these things have been run through, and it's been considered how important it allegedly is to lock society down. Again, a hugely flawed conclusion, a hastily jumped to conclusion that is in any way a correct strategy for dealing with any alleged health threat. There are serious questions to be raised about 5G, and the mainstream narrative again will just hush this over, but it's important to recognise that cities such as Wuhan recently fully functional with the 5G. It's important to recognise reports of people dropping dead, walking down the street in Wuhan and dropping dead and going blue in the face, and reconciling these breathing difficulties and other symptoms, recognising the potential connection there with 5G frequencies such as 60 gigahertz, which affects the covalent bond, between the two oxygen atoms in an oxygen molecule, and can affect the way hemoglobin in the lungs can pick up and transport oxygen. These are really important questions raised, and we can't say with certainty that these things are facts, but they really must be looked into. And when you see, again, known liars rubbishing any suggestion of looking into these things, when you see the idea of questioning 5G being so vehemently shouted down from some quarters, that you should smell a rat there, that this is a warning flag that something disingenuous is going on. You can expect more and more surveillance, more and more cameras, GPS data being accessed, location data. We're going to be tracked and traced a lot more. The compulsory vaccine is coming, and we need to think ahead to plan what we're going to do about that, because it's just around the corner. You need to know, are you going to step forward for your vaccination? Are you going to look into it? Are you going to question it? Are you going to try and evade it? These are things that you need to be starting to ask yourself now. So what can we do? There's lots we can do. We must continue to educate ourselves for a start. We must continue to ask honest questions and dig deep to find answers. We must continue to acknowledge who's a known liar and who isn't. We must try to separate the issues and try and inform ourselves as best we can. And one thing I thoroughly recommend is that any of your trusted YouTubers or alternative media outlets, you want to contact their websites directly, sign up to newsletter notifications of whatever platform they may ultimately have to move to, because soon all of these alternative media outlets will be silenced. It's inevitable. The degree to which you threaten and compromise the narrative and risk exposing it is the degree to which individual videos and channels will be shut down. Develop local connections within your community. Seriously try to hook up with people who are like-minded, if there are any around and in your community, and perhaps develop trade connections with people, even barter connections, but these local connections could be a lifeline in the future. It's important to increase our self-reliance, our productiveness. You might want to consider getting backyard chickens or growing some food and some vegetables in your garden. This is lastminute.com, but every little bit helps. Keep the conversation alive. Even though it might be harder and it might cause friction between people, it's really important to keep speaking and repeating the truth as you understand it, as you learn and you understand these things, share these ideas and try to keep the conversation going. Learn about rights and how crucial they are to your freedom. Learn about freedom. Most people don't really realize what freedom is. The ability to act upon your own judgment. It's not just about making choices, being free to make choices, because then you can just choose between presented choices. You must be free to act upon your own judgment and live your life accordingly. So study up on freedom and rights. They're very important concepts. I strongly suggest get interested in supporting your health, supporting your immune system. Get interested in optimizing your gut health, cleaning up your diet, avoiding EMF, pulsed microwave radiation. Wean yourself off your smartphone and your Wi-Fi in the interests of supporting your immune system. Remember, all of these people who are dying in hospital of this alleged coronavirus are people with seriously compromised immune systems. So it's a very good idea. It's always been top of my list of priorities to be interested in health. You must optimize the functionality of the vehicle you use for your human experience. And the same goes, of course, for your mind and gathering knowledge. The more knowledge you gather, the more you increase the context in which you're able to make sense of all subsequent experiences and events that you see happening in your world. Finally, I think the most important point is that what we can do is not get violent in the streets, because this will play completely into the hands of the state and the police. Although frustrations may run high, although stresses and strains may push you to the limit as you're locked down in whatever circumstances, potentially very challenging circumstances, it's really important to know that as soon as we abandon reasoned argument, as soon as we resort to violence, we've lost, and the state has the justification it needs just to clamp down, and you've lost the argument. As soon as you resort to violence, you've lost. What we must do is rehearse our understanding, gain knowledge, find truth, and practice the reasoned arguments to rationally persuade people of the truth. And the essential precondition for our human flourishment is freedom. Without freedom, humanity cannot flourish. Peace, wealth and abundance and happiness all depend on our freedom. And it's our freedom now that is being taken away from you. Please challenge this bogus narrative that there's a health threat out there. Thanks for listening. I hope you got some value from this. Visit the website lawfulrebel.com. There's loads more on there to help educate you towards health, freedom, rights, and how to thrive. Do watch out again for more on Lawful Rebel TV.